Welcome to David's Stories. Today we follow Norman Price, a trusting grandfather betrayed by his son and daughter-in-law's scheme to steal his fortune. With cunning and resolve, he protects his granddaughter, Alexa, and ensures justice. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly tales of betrayal and triumph. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the story. The morning light slipped through the blinds of my kitchen, casting golden slats across the oak table, where Ellen's absence still lingered like a ghost. 3 years since her passing, and the silence of this house, our house, had become a companion I neither welcomed nor could dismiss. At 72, I'd learned to live with it, to let it settle into the crevices of my days. But today, that silence felt different, charged, like the air before a storm. I was halfway through my coffee, the mug warm in my hands, when the phone rang. The sharp trill cut through the quiet, and I froze my gaze, flicking to the caller ID. Harry, my son. His name glowed on the screen, and something in my gut twisted. A faint familiar instinct honed from 40 years in construction, reading men across boardroom tables. Harry didn't call at 7 a.m., not unless something was wrong. I picked up my voice steady, despite the unease creeping up my spine. "Morning, son. Early for you, isn't it, Dad? Hear me out?" Harry's voice cracked through the line, jagged and nervous, like when he was 16 and confessed to denting my truck. "Mary really we want you to come to Alexa's birthday party today. It's at 2, but maybe you could come early." Around 1:30, I leaned back in my chair, watching steam curl from my coffee, like spirits rising. Since when did Harry need to beg me to see my granddaughter Alexa? My 8-year-old beacon of light was the one thing that kept my heart tethered to this world since Ellen left it. "When have I ever missed one of Alexa's birthdays, Harry?" No, that's not what I meant." A pause. "Too long." In the background, I caught a sharp murmur, Mary's voice insistent, like a blade slicing through his hesitation. "It's just, Mary's been planning this for weeks. She specifically asked me to make sure you're coming." I stirred my coffee, the spoon clinking against the ceramic, a tiny rebellion against the unease settling in my chest. Mary. My daughter-in-law, who treated my presence like an obligation, a box to check at family gatherings. Her sudden interest felt like a shadow moving in the corner of my vision there, but not quite clear. "That's thoughtful of her," I said, keeping my tone even. "What's on your mind, son? You sound off." "Oh, just family stuff." His laugh was forced metallic, like a machine trying to mimic warmth. "Mary has some ideas about how we can all be closer. Future plans. Can you come early? We'd love to talk before the party." The spoon stilled in my hand. Family stuff. In 3 years of widowhood, family stuff had never required a special prelude. I glanced at the refrigerator where Alexa's latest drawing hung, a crooked house with stick figures labeled Grandpa Daddy, Mommy Me in purple crayon. The sight usually warmed me, but now it felt like a warning. "Future plans," I asked, my voice calm but probing, like testing a foundation for cracks. "Yeah, just making sure everyone's taken care of." His voice dropped, almost a whisper, and I heard that same guilty tremor from when he was a boy, sneaking coins from Ellen's purse for candy. "Keep an open mind." "Okay, Dad." The line went dead before I could press further. I set the phone down, staring at it as if it might confess Harry's secrets. Something wasn't right. My businessman's instincts, sharpened by decades of deals and deceptions, screamed that this wasn't just about a birthday party. Harry's words, "everyone's taken care of," echoed in my mind, laced with a meaning I couldn't yet grasp. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, trying to shake the unease, but it clung to me like damp fog. Maybe Mary genuinely wanted to mend our strained family ties. Maybe I was reading too much into a simple invitation. But as I sat back down, my eyes drifted to Alexa's drawing again. That purple crayon family felt fragile, like it could crumble with a single misstep. Whatever Harry and Mary wanted to discuss, it could wait until after I'd celebrated my granddaughter's 8th birthday. Some things were sacred. Yet as I sipped my coffee, Ellen's voice slipped into my thoughts unbidden, but clear as if she were standing behind me. Promise me you'll always take care of Alexa Norman. But watch Harry carefully. He's weak, and weak men make dangerous choices when someone strong whispers in their ear. Her words spoken in her final lucid days had haunted me then. Now they felt like a prophecy. The closet smelled faintly of cedar and Ellen's lavender perfume, a scent that lingered in her clothes like a memory I couldn't bury. I stood there staring at shirts she'd never see me wear again, my fingers brushing a blue Oxford that carried the weight of her funeral. That day Mary had whispered to Harry, her voice sharp and calculating. "All this space, Harry. Too much for one person." Even then, something in her tone had pricked my instincts, but I dismissed it as grief clouding my judgment. Now I wasn't so sure. I pulled the shirt from its hanger, catching my reflection in the mirror. A man in his 70s, gray at the temples, but still sharper than Harry and Mary realized. My wallet sat heavy in my back pocket, a silent tally of the $70,000 I'd given them over the past 3 years. Mortgage payments when Harry lost his job. Car loans when Mary's temporary emergencies became permanent. Alexa's private school tuition, because Ellen and I believed she deserved better than her parents could provide. Each request had come with Harry's shame-faced explanations and Mary's perfectly timed gratitude, but now those transactions felt like breadcrumbs leading to a trap. I dressed slowly, my mind replaying Mary's words from 3 weeks ago, standing in my kitchen. "Norman, don't you think this house is too big for you? There are lovely assisted living communities where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance." At the time, I'd thought it was concern, however misplaced. But now her words carried a different weight, like a predator sizing up its prey. I grabbed my keys from the counter, passing Alexa's drawing again. "Best day ever." Grandpa written in purple marker along the bottom from our last fishing trip. That memory grounded me, but Ellen's warning echoed louder. "Watch Harry carefully." As I stepped into the garage, the hum of the door opener felt like a signal, a shift from safety to uncertainty. Ellen's Mercedes sat in her spot, covered and untouched, a relic I'd kept payments on long after her death, unable to let go. Maybe that was what Harry and Mary counted on, my inability to say no, my heart too soft for family. But 40 years in construction had taught me to check foundations before building anything important, and I sensed this one was crumbling. I backed out of the driveway, watching my house shrink in the rearview mirror. By tonight, after whatever family discussion Harry and Mary had planned, I suspected I'd see everything differently. For now I needed to buy Alexa a birthday gift, something special. Perhaps the last innocent gift before the storm broke. Northtown Mall buzzed with Saturday morning chaos, families weaving through toy stores and coffee shops. I parked near the main entrance, the air crisp with autumn's edge, and felt a strange electricity, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Alexa loved building things, her fascination with structures sparked during a school trip to the Space Needle last month. The Lego store was my first stop. The Statue of Liberty set caught my eye, intricate enough to challenge her curious mind, but not overwhelm her. $180, a small price for the joy it would bring. The clerk, a young man with a bright smile, rang it up. "Great choice, sir. My daughter loves this series." "Gift wrapping." "Please," I said. "It's for my granddaughter's 8th birthday." Next, the sporting goods store. Alexa had outgrown her pink toddler bike, and she'd been dropping hints about a real bicycle. A Trek model stood in the window, lightweight, with handbrakes she could manage, and reflective strips for safety. $320, but her delighted face would be worth every penny. As I loaded the boxed bike into my SUV, I checked my watch, 9:10. Plenty of time for one more stop. Norman. What a lovely surprise. Dorothy Henderson appeared beside my car, clutching a bookstore bag, her silver hair catching the morning light like a halo. My neighbor of 15 years smiled warmly, but her eyes held a flicker of something: curiosity, perhaps concern. "Dorothy, good morning." I closed the SUV's hatch. Beating the crowds, I see. Oh, you know me. She gestured toward the mall. Though I suppose you're here for birthday preparations. Harry mentioned Alexa's party when I saw him last week. I froze my hands, tightening on my shopping bags. He mentioned it Tuesday morning downtown. Dorothy's voice was casual, but her words landed like stones. He and Mary were coming out of First National Bank with quite a stack of papers. Looked very official, probably refinancing something the way young couples do. Tuesday, 4 days ago. Harry hadn't mentioned any banking business during his nervous call this morning. My mind raced, piecing together fragments. Papers, official business. Harry's guilt-laced voice. Probably just routine, I said, shifting my bags to hide the tremor in my hands. Of course, dear. Dorothy patted my arm. Give my love to that sweet granddaughter of yours. She bustled off toward the bookstore, leaving me rooted beside my car, the air suddenly colder. Banking business on Tuesday. A nervous call on Saturday. The timing felt too precise, like a gear clicking into place. I shook off the thought and headed to the florist near the mall's east entrance. Mary liked flowers, white roses specifically. A gesture to keep the peace, though peace felt like a distant memory now. The florist, a woman with dirt-stained fingers, wrapped a dozen roses in silver paper. Special occasion, she asked. My granddaughter's birthday. These are for her mother. How thoughtful. She tied the ribbon with a flourish. She'll love them. $28 for flowers that would wilt in a week, but small gestures mattered when tensions simmered beneath the surface. I drove home through morning traffic, Dorothy's words looping in my mind. A stack of papers, official and serious. Harry's crises were endless: car repairs, medical bills, always something. But he'd never mentioned a bank visit. The small voice in my head, the one that had kept my business afloat through recessions and betrayals, whispered, check the foundation. Back home, I unwrapped the gifts, the crinkle of paper loud in the quiet house. The Lego set and bicycle box sat on the dining table, a promise to Alexa that some things remained untouched by whatever shadow loomed. But as I sliced an apple for lunch, my eyes kept drifting to the refrigerator, to Alexa's drawing. That purple crayon house felt like a relic from a world I no longer trusted. I glanced at the clock, 12:30. Time to leave for the party. But before I grabbed my keys, I paused at the hallway mirror, catching my reflection again. The man staring back wasn't just a grandfather. He was Norman Price, who'd built a construction empire from a single truck and a stubborn will. If Harry and Mary were planning something, they'd underestimated the man they thought they knew. As I stepped toward the door, Ellen's voice echoed again, sharper this time, as if she stood just beyond the veil of memory. Watch Harry carefully. Norman. Weak men break when strong voices tempt them. I didn't know what awaited me at that party, but I knew one thing: I'd protect Alexa no matter the cost. The roses, the gifts, the car keys in my hand, they were my armor for now. Tonight I'd step into their world and see what shadows they were hiding. The autumn air bit at my knuckles as I carried Alexa's gifts from the SUV to the house, the Lego box tucked under one arm, the bicycle box balanced precariously in the other. The roses for Mary lay across the passenger seat, their silver wrapping glinting like a promise or a warning. Inside, the silence of my home felt heavier than it had this morning, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for me to uncover what Harry and Mary were hiding. Dorothy's words echoed in my mind. A stack of papers, official and serious. I set the gifts on the dining table, my eyes drifting to Alexa's drawing on the refrigerator. That purple crayon house with its stick-figure family seemed to pulse with a truth I hadn't yet grasped. I sank into a chair, the weight of the morning pressing against my temples. 40 years in construction had taught me to trust my instincts, to sense when a foundation was weak before it cracked. Harry's nervous call, Mary's sudden enthusiasm, Dorothy's offhand remark about the bank — they were cracks, small but undeniable. I needed to prepare for this party, not just as a grandfather bearing gifts, but as a man stepping into a game where the rules were hidden. Ellen's voice whispered again, unbidden from the edges of my memory. Watch Harry carefully. Norman. Weak men break when strong voices tempt them. I didn't know what Mary was whispering in Harry's ear, but I knew it wasn't love. I stood shaking off the chill that had nothing to do with the October breeze and moved to the kitchen counter. The gifts needed wrapping, a task that felt both mundane and sacred. Alexa's joy was the one constant I could cling to, a beacon in this fog of doubt. I unrolled a sheet of wrapping paper, bright blue, with silver stars, her favorite colors, and smoothed it over the Lego box. As I taped the edges, I pictured her small hands tearing it open, her eyes lighting up at the Statue of Liberty set. That image grounded me, but it couldn't silence the questions clawing at my mind. What papers had Harry and Mary been carrying at the bank? Why had Harry sounded so desperate on the phone? And why did I feel like I was walking into a trap? The bicycle box was too large to wrap neatly, so I tied a red ribbon around it, imagining Alexa's squeal when she saw it. She'd outgrown that pink toddler bike last summer, her legs too long, her spirit too big for its childish frame. I wanted her to have something real, something that matched the strength I saw in her. As I worked, my gaze kept drifting to the refrigerator, to that drawing. Best day ever, Grandpa. The words scrawled in purple marker felt like a talisman against whatever darkness Harry and Mary were brewing. I glanced at the clock, 10:30 a.m. Time was slipping faster than I'd expected. I needed to eat to gather my strength for whatever awaited at the party. I sliced another apple, the knife's rhythm, steadying my nerves, and poured a glass of water. As I sat at the kitchen table, the morning light caught the edge of Ellen's old teacup still sitting on the shelf where she'd left it. It was a silly thing to keep chipped and faded, but it felt like a piece of her, a reminder of her clarity in seeing people for who they were. She'd seen something in Mary I'd missed, a calculating edge, a hunger masked by smiles. "Promise me you'll always take care of Alexa," she'd said, her voice frail but fierce. "But watch Harry carefully." I hadn't understood then, but now her words were a map to a truth I was only beginning to uncover. The phone buzzed, jarring me from my thoughts. A text from Harry. "Dad, just checking you're still coming early. Mary's got everything ready. Can't wait to see you." The words were warm, but they felt rehearsed, like lines from a script he hadn't fully memorized. I typed back, "Of course, son. Wouldn't miss it. See you at 1:30. I hit send, my fingers lingering on the screen. The unease in my gut tightened a knot I couldn't untie. I stood brushing apple crumbs from my hands and moved to the hallway mirror to check my appearance. The blue Oxford shirt hung neatly, but my reflection showed a man who'd aged beyond his years, not in body, but in the weight of what he carried. I'd given Harry and Mary $70,000 over 3 years' mortgage payments. Car repairs, Alexa's tuition. Each request had seemed reasonable, even noble, tied to Alexa's needs or Harry's emergencies. But now those payments felt like stepping stones in a plan I hadn't seen coming. Mary's suggestion about assisted living, her lingering glances at my granite countertops, her calculated grief at Ellen's funeral. They weren't isolated moments. They were pieces of a puzzle, and I was starting to see the picture. I grabbed the gifts and roses, locking the house behind me. The garage door hummed open, revealing Ellen's Mercedes, still covered, a ghost I couldn't let go. I climbed into my SUV, the engine's purr a stark contrast to the storm brewing in my mind. As I pulled out of the driveway, the neighborhood felt different too. Quiet, too still, as if it knew something I didn't. Mrs. Henderson's flower boxes across the street were vibrant with marigolds, but even they seemed to watch me, their colors too bright against the gray sky. The drive to Harry's house was 20 minutes, enough time to replay every interaction, every word, every glance. Mary's voice at Christmas last year, sharp and distracted as she scrolled her phone. Harry's excuses for needing just one more loan. The way they'd both changed the subject when I asked about their finances. I'd been blind, lulled by love and grief, but today my eyes were open. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles whitening. Whatever they were planning, I'd face it with the same clarity that had built my empire from a single truck and a stubborn dream. Harry Street was lined with cars, neighbors already arriving for the party. Their house, a modest two-story with a sagging porch, looked festive from the outside streamers dangling from the mailbox balloons tied to the fence. But the cheer felt hollow, like a stage set for a play I hadn't auditioned for. I parked a block away, needing a moment to collect myself. The roses sat on the passenger seat, their scent cloying, now less a gesture of peace and more a prop in a game I didn't fully understand. I carried the gifts toward the house, the bicycle box heavy in my arms, the Lego set tucked under my elbow. The front door swung open before I could knock, and Mary's voice rang out, bright as a bell but sharp at the edges. "Norman, you look absolutely wonderful today." Her arms spread wide as if we were long-lost friends, not family who'd seen each other 3 weeks ago. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too bright, and her hand touched my arm twice as she spoke, a gesture she'd never offered before. "Thank you, Mary," I said, stepping inside. "The party looks lovely." And it did. Streamers looped through every doorway, balloon clusters bobbing in corners, a table laden with cupcakes and punch. But the extravagance felt forced, like a distraction from something darker. This wasn't the simple backyard gathering of Alexa's past birthdays. This was a performance. "Dad, there he is." Harry appeared from the living room, his voice booming like a carnival barker's. "Come meet Mike from work." "Mike, this is my amazing father I've told you so much about." His hand clapped my shoulder too hard, too enthusiastic. Harry never called me amazing. His workplace stories about me were usually complaints about my old-school ways or my refusal to retire. Today his praise felt like a mask, and it didn't fit. The living room buzzed with familiar faces. The Johnsons from next door chatted by the fireplace, their laughter a touch too loud. Mrs. Smith, the neighborhood's unofficial historian, sat on the couch, her sharp eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Carlos and Elena Martinez helped their son Tommy set up party games on the coffee table. It was all so normal, yet so wrong, like a painting with one color out of place. Grandpa Alexa's voice cut through the noise, pure and untainted. She ran toward me, her ponytail bouncing, and wrapped her arms around my waist. For a moment the world righted itself. Her smile was the only genuine thing in this room, but even that was shadowed by something, worry perhaps, or a secret too heavy for an 8-year-old to carry. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." I handed her the gift bag with the Lego set, this one first. The big surprise comes later. She took it with careful fingers, her eyes widening at the Statue of Liberty on the box. But when she looked up to thank me, a flicker of sadness crossed her face, gone as quickly as it came. Mary swooped in, her voice syrupy. "Isn't Grandpa generous, honey? Say thank you properly." "Thank you, Grandpa. It's really cool." Alexa's voice held gratitude, but there was something else, guilt maybe, or fear. An 8-year-old shouldn't sound like that on her birthday. Harry guided me toward the kitchen, where Mike Davidson, a wiry man in a polo shirt, nursed a beer. "Mike, Dad's the guy who taught me everything about business." Harry said, his voice loud enough for the room to hear. "Trust, loyalty, family. That's all him." The words were strange, rehearsed, and Mike nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable with Harry's intensity. Mary reappeared with a plate of canapés, positioning herself between me and the other guests. "Norman, you must try these. I made them with your sophisticated tastes in mind." Sophisticated tastes. Mary had never cared about my preferences beyond ensuring there was enough food at family gatherings. Now she hovered, refilling my glass before it was half empty, asking about my comfort every few minutes. It was suffocating, and it wasn't care. Across the room, Alexa opened cards from her friends, her movements mechanical, her smiles polite but distant. When Tommy Martinez asked about her Lego set, she nodded, but her excitement was muted, like a flame flickering in the wind. Mrs. Smith settled beside me on the couch, her voice low. She's growing up so fast. Such a thoughtful child. Last week she asked me if grandparents and parents ever disagree about big decisions. My wine glass paused halfway to my lips. What did you tell her? That families work through differences with love and honesty. Mrs. Smith's eyes lingered on Alexa, her brow creasing. But she seemed troubled. More than a child should be. I followed her gaze. Alexa stood by the gift table, her shoulders hunched, glancing at me as if weighing whether to approach. Harry and Mary exchanged a quick look across the room, brief but deliberate like a signal. I'd noticed it before, but now it felt like a code I needed to crack. They were orchestrating something, managing conversations, steering guests away from certain topics. The air grew thicker, the room smaller, as if the walls were closing in. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "I need some air." Mary jumped up, her smile tight. "Oh, Norman let me show you to the patio. It's just through here." Her offer felt rehearsed, like she'd anticipated my every move. I waved her off, my voice light but firm. "I know the way, Mary. Been here before." I stepped into the hallway, the noise of the party fading behind me. Family photos lined the walls, Harry as a boy. Alexa's first birthday, Ellen and me at the lake. Each image felt like a relic from a life I'd trusted, now tainted by doubt. Small footsteps followed me, soft but deliberate. I turned to find Alexa, her eyes wide, glancing back to ensure we were alone. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She bit her lip, a gesture so like Ellen's it stole my breath. "I need to tell you something. About Mom and Dad." My chest tightened, but I knelt to her level, keeping my voice steady. "What is it, sweetheart? You look scared." Her gaze darted to the living room, then back to me. "They're planning to take your money. Tonight after everyone leaves. I heard them last night when I was supposed to be asleep." Her words hit like a thunderclap, shattering the fragile hope I'd clung to. "Mom said you have too much money for an old man living alone. She said the papers from the bank will make it legal." The hallway seemed to tilt, the photos on the walls blurring. I gripped the doorframe, fighting to keep my expression calm for her sake. "What else did you hear, honey? Dad was scared. He kept saying, 'What if he finds out?' But Mom said it'd be too late by then." Tears welled in her eyes, and she whispered, "I don't want them to take your money, Grandpa. You're the only one who listens to me." I pulled her into a hug, her small body trembling against mine. Ellen's granddaughter, carrying secrets no child should bear. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined, a blade forged by my own son and his wife. "You did the right thing telling me," I whispered into her hair. "This stays our secret for now, okay? Can you be brave for me?" She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "Will you stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'll handle everything." I held her at arm's length, meeting her eyes with a certainty I didn't fully feel. "Go back to your party. Act normal." "Can you do that?" "I think so." Her voice was small, but her nod was firm. "I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, more than you'll ever know." We walked back to the party, hand in hand. But the world had shifted in those whispered moments. The son I'd raised, the daughter-in-law I'd supported, they'd planned this betrayal within earshot of an innocent child. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught Harry's eyes across the room. He smiled and waved his enthusiasm, as false as the streamers overhead. Now I understood the performance. The party dragged on, a blur of forced laughter and careful choreography. Every smile felt calculated, every gesture staged. Harry kept steering conversations away from money or future plans, while Mary hovered, her eyes tracking me like a predator. Only Alexa's presence felt real, though her joy was dimmed by the weight of her secret. I played my part, gracious grandfather, doting patriarch, but inside my mind was a storm of calculations. Mrs. Smith's comment about Alexa's question lingered, a clue I couldn't ignore. "Do grandparents and parents ever disagree about big decisions?" Alexa had been probing, searching for answers to a fear she couldn't fully articulate. And Dorothy's mention of the bank visit Tuesday 4 days ago with a stack of papers fit too neatly with Alexa's warning. Papers from the bank, legal documents, a plan to make it legal. My businessman's instincts roared to life, piecing together a puzzle I wished I didn't recognize. Around 4 p.m., as guests began to thin, Harry caught my arm, his smile too bright. "Dad, stick around after everyone leaves. Okay? Mary and I have that family chat we mentioned. It's important." His words were casual, but his grip was heavy, almost restraining. I nodded, my face a mask of fatigue. "Sure, son. I'll stay for a bit." But my mind was already elsewhere, plotting my next move. I needed to leave early to regroup, to check the foundation before it collapsed. "Actually," I said, rubbing my temple, "I'm getting a headache. Might head home soon." Harry's face fell and Mary appeared at his side, her voice urgent. "Norman, we've planned something special tonight. You should stay." Her eyes searched mine, looking for weakness, but I held her gaze, letting her see the man who'd built a fortune from nothing. Another time, I said, my voice soft but final. I knelt to Alexa, pulling her into a hug. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. I'll see you soon." Her arms tightened around me, and I whispered, "Everything's going to be okay." As I walked to my car, Harry and Mary stood in the doorway, watching me with frustrated tension. I felt their eyes like a weight on my back, but I didn't look back. In the SUV, I sat for a moment, the roses still on the passenger seat, their petals curling slightly. The party had been a stage, and I'd played my role. But the real performance was yet to come. The air in Harry's house was thick with the scent of sugar and pretense, the kind of sweetness that cloaks something bitter. I stood in the foyer, the weight of Alexa's gifts grounding me as I scanned the room. Streamers twisted like vines across the ceiling, balloons bobbed in corners like tethered spirits, and the chatter of neighbors filled the space with a false warmth. It was a stage meticulously set, and I was the audience, or perhaps the prey. My businessman's instincts honed over 40 years of deals, and double crosses hummed like a tuning fork. Something was wrong here, and it wasn't just the overdone decorations. Mary's voice cut through the noise, bright and sharp as a blade. "Norman, you're here!" She swept toward me, her arms wide, her smile a polished mask. "You look so well today." Her hand grazed my arm, a gesture too familiar, too deliberate. Mary had never been this warm, not at Christmas, not at Ellen's funeral, not in the 3 years I'd propped up their faltering lives with my money. Her eyes, bright with an energy I didn't recognize, studied me like a chessboard. "Thank you, Mary," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the unease coiling in my gut. "The party looks elaborate." I stepped inside the Lego gift bag, swinging lightly, the bicycle box awkward in my arms, the roses for Mary tucked under my elbow. The extravagance of the set-up cupcakes piled high, a rented bounce house visible through the window, felt like a distraction, a curtain drawn to hide the truth. Dad Harry's voice boomed from the living room, too loud, too eager. "There's my guy. Come meet Mike from work." He clapped my shoulder with a force that felt more like restraint than affection, his grin wide but brittle. "Mike, this is my dad, Norman Price, the man who taught me everything about family and trust." The words were rehearsed, delivered with the fervor of a salesman pitching a bad deal. Harry never called me his hero. His stories about me were usually complaints, my stubbornness, my refusal to retire, my outdated business sense. Today he was playing a part, and he wasn't good at it. Mike, a wiry man in a polo shirt, offered a polite nod, his discomfort palpable. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Price." He sipped his beer, avoiding Harry's manic gaze. I returned the nod, my eyes flicking to the room's edges, cataloging every detail. The Johnsons from next door laughed by the fireplace, their voices too bright. Mrs. Smith sat on the couch, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd like a sentinel. Carlos and Elena Martinez arranged party games with their son Tommy, their movements casual but their glances guarded. It was all so normal, yet so wrong, like a melody played in the wrong key. Then I saw her, Alexa. My granddaughter. The light of my world darted through the crowd, her ponytail bouncing. "Grandpa," she called, her voice cutting through the artificial cheer like a bell in a storm. She threw her arms around my waist, and for a moment the world felt right. Her warmth, her unfiltered joy was the only truth in this room. But as I hugged her back, I felt a tremor in her small frame, a tension that didn't belong on an 8-year-old's birthday. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, kneeling to her level. I handed her the gift bag, the Lego set inside, crinkling softly. "Open this one first. The big surprise comes later." Her eyes widened at the Statue of Liberty on the box, a spark of excitement flaring. But when she looked up, a shadow crossed her face, sadness or something heavier gone before I could name it. Mary swooped in, her voice syrupy. "Isn't Grandpa generous, honey? Say thank you properly." Her hand rested on Alexa's shoulder, a gesture that looked maternal but felt possessive like a stage direction. "Thank you, Grandpa," Alexa said, her voice bright but strained. "It's really cool." There was gratitude there, but something else. Guilt, fear, a burden too big for her small shoulders. I wanted to pull her aside to ask what was wrong, but Mary's presence loomed, her smile a warning. Harry guided me toward the kitchen, his arm around my shoulders like a shepherd herding a stray. "Mike, Dad's the guy who built Price Construction from nothing," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Taught me everything about loyalty and family." The word loyalty landed like a stone, and Mike's polite smile faltered. I nodded, playing along, but my mind was elsewhere, sifting through the clues. Harry's forced enthusiasm, Mary's calculated warmth, Alexa's shadowed expression. They were pieces of a puzzle, and I was missing the picture. In the kitchen, Mary pressed a plate of canapés into my hands. "Norman, you must try these. I made them with you in mind." Her words were sweet, but her eyes were sharp, tracking my every reaction. I took a bite, the flavor lost in the storm of my thoughts. Mary had never cared about my tastes. She barely remembered my coffee order at family dinners. Now she hovered, refilling my wine glass before it was half empty, asking if I was comfortable if the room was too warm. It was suffocating, a performance designed to keep me pliant. I glanced at Alexa across the room, opening cards from her friends. Her movements were mechanical, her smiles polite but distant, like she was acting a part too. When Tommy Martinez asked about her Lego set, she nodded, but her voice lacked the spark I'd expected. "It's cool," she said, her eyes flicking to me, then away. Something was wrong, and it wasn't just the party. Mrs. Smith settled beside me on the couch, her perfume sharp with lavender. "She's growing up so fast," she said, her voice low, her eyes on Alexa. "Such a thoughtful child. Last week she asked me something odd, whether grandparents and parents ever fight over important decisions." My wineglass paused halfway to my lips. "What did you tell her, that families sort things out with love and honesty?" Mrs. Smith's brow creased, her gaze lingering on Alexa. But she seemed troubled, like she was carrying something heavy. The words landed like a punch. "Alexa, my bright, curious girl carrying a secret." I followed Mrs. Smith's gaze, watching Alexa stack her cards with precision, her small hands steady but her shoulders hunched. Harry and Mary exchanged a glance across the room, brief, subtle, but unmistakable. A signal. I'd seen it before, but now it felt like a code, a choreography I wasn't meant to notice. They were managing the room, steering conversations, keeping me in their sights. The air grew thicker, the walls closer, as if the house itself was complicit in their plan. I set my glass down, my pulse quickening. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "I need to use the bathroom." Mary was at my side in an instant, her smile tight. "Let me show you the way, Norman. It's just down the hall." Her offer was unnecessary. I'd been in this house dozens of times, but her insistence felt like control, not courtesy. "I know the way," I said, my voice light but firm. I stepped into the hallway, the party's noise fading behind me. The walls were lined with photos, Harry as a boy grinning with a fishing pole. Alexa's first birthday, Ellen's arms around her. Our last family picnic, before Ellen's illness stole her from us. Each image was a shard of a life I'd trusted, now fractured by doubt. I paused, my fingers brushing a frame, and felt a chill as if Ellen's presence lingered just beyond my reach. Watch Harry carefully. Norman. Small footsteps broke the silence, soft but deliberate. I turned to find Alexa, her eyes wide, glancing back to ensure we were alone. Her face was pale, her lips pressed tight, and she bit her lower lip, a gesture so like Ellen's it stole my breath. "Grandpa," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I need to tell you something important, about Mom and Dad." My chest tightened, but I knelt to her level, keeping my voice steady. "What is it, sweetheart? You can tell me anything." She glanced back again, her small body tense, as if the shadows themselves might betray her. "They're planning to take your money. Tonight after the party." The words spilled out in a rush, as if she'd been holding them too long. "I heard them last night when I was supposed to be asleep. Mom said you have too much money for an old man living alone. She said the papers from the bank will make it legal." The hallway seemed to tilt, the photos blurring into a kaleidoscope of memories. I gripped the doorframe, fighting to keep my face calm for her sake. Her words were a thunderclap, shattering the illusion of family I'd clung to. "What else did you hear, honey?" I asked, my voice soft but urgent. "Dad was scared," she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. "He kept saying, 'What if he finds out?' But Mom said it'd be too late by then. She said the papers would fix everything." She swallowed hard, her voice dropping even lower. "Grandpa, I don't want them to take your money. You're the only one who really listens to me." I pulled her into a fierce hug, her trembling body pressed against mine. Ellen's granddaughter carrying a secret that could break her. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined, a wound carved by my own son and his wife, planned within earshot of this innocent child. "You did the right thing telling me," I whispered into her hair. "This is our secret for now, okay? Can you be brave and keep it?" She nodded against my shoulder, her breath hitching. "Are you going to stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'll handle everything." I held her at arm's length, meeting her eyes with a certainty I forced myself to feel. "Go back to your party. Act like everything's normal. Can you do that for me?" "I think so." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, her small face resolute despite the fear. "Will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad?" The question hit like a physical blow. "Alexa, nothing could ever change how much I love you. Nothing. Do you understand?" Relief flooded her face, and for the first time that day her smile was real, a flicker of light in the darkness. "I love you too, Grandpa." She squeezed my hand, then slipped back toward the party, her footsteps fading into the hum of voices. I stood, my heart pounding, the hallway closing in. The son I'd raised, the daughter-in-law I'd supported, they'd conspired to steal my life's work, and they'd done it with Alexa's innocent ears listening. The betrayal was a living thing coiling around my chest, but it wasn't just anger driving me now. It was clarity. I rejoined the party, slipping back into conversations with the ease of a man who'd navigated boardrooms and betrayals. Mrs. Smith was prattling about her garden, but I barely heard her, my eyes tracking Harry and Mary. Harry checked his watch for the third time in 10 minutes, his fingers tapping nervously. Mary appeared beside him, their brief eye contact, a silent exchange, coordinated and practiced. They were managing me, I realized, keeping me comfortable, engaged, present for whatever they'd planned after the guests left. "Norman, more wine." Mary's hand touched my arm, her smile a perfect blend of concern and charm. "You look a bit pale. Are you feeling all right?" Pale I probably was. Learning your family plans to rob you will do that. But I managed a tired smile, letting my shoulders slump just enough. "Just a slight headache. Nothing to worry about." Her expression shifted, a microsecond of relief, as if my weariness was a victory. A tired grandfather would be easier to manipulate. For the next hour I played the part, gracious, slightly frail, the aging patriarch they expected. I complimented Mary's hospitality, laughed at Harry's forced anecdotes, and watched their coordination with a detached curiosity. Harry steered conversations away from money or retirement, redirecting to safe topics like Alexa's softball games or the weather. Mary hovered, her attentiveness a performance for an audience I hadn't yet identified. The room felt like a chessboard, and I was a piece they thought they could move. Around 5:00 p.m., as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, guests began to gather their coats. Harry caught my arm, his smile strained. "Dad, stick around after everyone leaves." "Okay. Mary and I really want to have that family chat we mentioned." The air grew heavy like the moment before lightning strikes. I nodded, my face a mask of exhaustion. "Sure, son. Sounds important." But my mind was racing, plotting my escape. I needed time to process Alexa's revelation, to check the foundation before it crumbled. "Actually," I said, rubbing my temple, "this headache's getting worse. I think I'll head home early." Harry's face fell and Mary stepped closer, her voice urgent. "Norman, we've been planning this talk for weeks. It's special. You should stay." Her eyes searched mine, looking for cracks, but I held her gaze, letting her see the man who'd built an empire from nothing. "Another time," I said, my tone gentle but final. "Family isn't going anywhere." Harry's face flushed, his voice rising. "Dad, it's time-sensitive. Financial stuff. It can't wait. Financial stuff." The phrase landed like a confession. I filed it away, my heart pounding, but my expression calm. "Tomorrow, son. I promise." I turned to Alexa, who watched from the gift table, her eyes wide with worry. I knelt, pulling her into a hug that felt like a vow. "Thank you for the best birthday party, sweetheart," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. Then softer for her alone, "Everything will be okay." Her arms tightened around my neck. "I love you, Grandpa," she whispered, her voice trembling but strong. I stood, feeling Harry's hand on my shoulder, heavier than necessary, almost restraining. "Dad, just give us an hour. 1 hour." I looked into his eyes and saw not my son, but a desperate man caught in a web of his own making. "Another time, Harry," I said, my voice steady. "I need to rest." I walked to my car, their eyes burning into my back. Mary whispered something to Harry, her voice sharp and urgent, but I didn't look back. In the SUV, I sat for a moment, the roses still on the passenger seat, their petals curling like secrets. The party had been a masquerade, and I'd seen through the masks. Alexa's words echoed in my mind. "They're planning to take your money. Tonight." The betrayal was real, and it was bigger than I'd feared. As I started the engine, Ellen's voice whispered again, clear as a bell. "Protect Alexa, Norman. But watch Harry carefully." I pulled away from the house, the balloons fading in the rear-view mirror. The game had begun, and I was no longer just a grandfather. I was Norman Price, and I'd built my life on outsmarting those who underestimated me. Tonight I'd start building my defense. The drive home from Harry's house felt like navigating a labyrinth, each turn shadowed by the weight of Alexa's words. "They're planning to take your money. Tonight." The streetlights blurred into streaks of gold, mirroring the chaos in my mind. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as I replayed the party. The forced smiles, the coded glances, the suffocating performance of family. My son and daughter-in-law had woven a trap, and I'd nearly walked into it blind. But I wasn't blind anymore. The roses for Mary, still on the passenger seat, seemed to mock me, their silver wrapping, curling like the edges of a lie. I pulled into my driveway, the garage door humming open with a mechanical indifference. The house loomed dark and silent, no longer the sanctuary it had been that morning. I carried Alexa's unwrapped bicycle box inside, leaving the Lego set and roses in the car, small relics of a day that had shattered my trust. The kitchen was as I'd left it, the apple core browning on the counter. Alexa's drawing on the refrigerator glowing faintly under the moonlight, streaming through the window. "Best day ever, Grandpa." The words, scrawled in purple marker, felt like a plea, now a reminder of what I had to protect. I sank into a chair, my pulse still racing from the party, from Alexa's whispered confession. Her small voice echoed in my mind. Mom said you have too much money for an old man living alone. The betrayal was a living thing coiling in my chest, but it wasn't just pain driving me now. It was purpose. 40 years in construction had taught me to check foundations before building anything lasting, and this family's foundation was crumbling. I needed to see the cracks for myself. I stood my legs steadier than I expected and walked to my home office. The room was a fortress of memory lined with blueprints and contracts from my days building price construction from a single truck and a stubborn dream. Ellen's portrait hung above the wall, safe, her eyes sharp and knowing, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. Protect Alexa Norman. Watch Harry carefully. Her voice, unbidden but clear, felt like a guide through the fog. I spun the safe's combination lock, 18-19-59, Ellen's birthday, and the door clicked open with a soft thud. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her memory would help me protect what we'd built together. Inside were the documents that told the story of my life and Harry's greed. Bank statements, investment portfolios, property deeds, all meticulously organized. I pulled them out, spreading them across my desk like a general mapping a battlefield. The numbers stared back at me, cold and undeniable. $70,000 in payments to Harry and Mary over 3 years. Mortgage payments when Harry lost his job. Car loans for Mary's emergencies. Alexa's private school tuition, because Ellen and I believed she deserved better than her parents could provide. Each transaction had seemed reasonable, even noble at the time. Now they were evidence of manipulation, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to tonight's betrayal. I opened a ledger, my handwriting neat and precise, detailing 247 individual payments. A $5,000 loan for Harry's urgent transmission repair that turned into a full engine rebuild. $200 monthly for Mary's temporary grocery needs, which became a permanent expectation. $30,000 for Alexa's school, justified by Mary's tearful pleas about giving her daughter a better future. I'd paid willingly, driven by love for Alexa and a belief in family. But as I traced the numbers, I saw the pattern: escalating requests, each one larger, each one conditioning me to say yes. Mary's suggestion about assisted living 3 weeks ago. This house is too big for you. Norman wasn't concern. It was reconnaissance. I leaned back, my chair creaking under the weight of realization. They hadn't just planned to take my money. They'd engineered a campaign to erode my independence, to paint me as an old man too frail to manage his own affairs. The papers Dorothy saw at the bank, official and serious, were the final piece. Legal documents, Alexa had said. Papers to make it legal. My mind raced, connecting dots I'd been too trusting to see. They weren't just after my savings. They wanted everything: my house, my investments, my legacy. I pulled out my investment portfolio. The numbers stark in the dim light. Liquid assets, $2.3 million. 3 rental properties unencumbered by mortgages. This house paid off a decade ago. Far more than Harry and Mary suspected, and certainly more than they could steal in one night's maneuvering. But this wasn't about money anymore. It was about Alexa, her trembling voice, her fear that her parents' greed would tear us apart. It was about justice for a child who deserved better, and punishment for adults who'd exploited my love. Ellen's portrait watched me, her gaze steady. Weak men make dangerous choices when someone strong whispers in their ear. Mary was the strong voice, I realized now. Harry's guilt, his nervous tremors, his hesitation. They were signs of a man swayed, not a mastermind. Mary had orchestrated this, her calculating eyes at the funeral, her lingering glances at my countertops, her carefully timed gratitude. She'd been whispering for years, and Harry had broken under her spell. My phone sat silent on the desk, but I knew Harry and Mary were scrambling their carefully planned family discussion, derailed by my early exit. The thought gave me a grim satisfaction, like outmaneuvering a rival in a negotiation. I needed allies now, people who knew me as Norman Price, not just Grandpa. I opened my business card file, the leather worn from decades of use, and found James Miller's personal number. Vice President of First National Bank, a friend of 20 years who'd seen me through loans investments and the slow climb to success. James would understand what legal documents obtained under false pretenses meant. He'd trust my word over Harry's. The clock showed 9:30 p.m., too late for a call, but I made a note for first thing tomorrow. I needed to know what papers Harry and Mary had prepared, how far their plan extended. Next, I pulled my will from the safe, the standard document leaving everything to Harry with provisions for Alexa's education. It was written when I believed my son had integrity, when I thought love bound us. That would change immediately. Catherine Davis. My notary for decades was independent, discreet, and unconnected to any bank where Harry and Mary might have allies. Another call for tomorrow. I spread the investment statements across my desk, calculating my net worth with a precision I hadn't needed in years. $2. $3 million in liquid assets plus the rental properties, plus this house. A fortune they hadn't anticipated, and one I'd protect with every ounce of my cunning. But this wasn't just about safeguarding wealth. It was about ensuring consequences for betrayal, about honoring Ellen's last wish. Protect Alexa. I wouldn't let her grow up in a world where greed trumped love. My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Harry's name glowed on the screen. I let it ring, each chime a reminder of his complicity. When it stopped, a voicemail appeared. I played it, his voice strained, almost pleading. "Dad, I'm sorry you left early. We were really hoping to talk. Are you okay? Call me back." The concern was fake, a thin veneer over desperation. I deleted the message, my resolve hardening. I stood walking to the window overlooking Ellen's rose garden. The bushes were neglected, their blooms sparse, but a single bud caught the moonlight, defiant in the darkness. I felt her presence there, not as a ghost, but as a force urging me forward. Tomorrow I'd build a plan as solid as the foundations I'd laid in my career. Harry and Mary thought they were playing me, but they'd forgotten who I was. Norman Price didn't just build houses. He built empires, and he protected what was his. Sunday morning dawned gray and cold, the sky heavy with the threat of rain. I'd slept fitfully, my dreams tangled with Ellen's voice and Alexa's tearful eyes. But when I woke, my businessman's instincts were razor sharp, my mind clear with purpose. Over coffee in my office, I reviewed my notes from last night, each detail a brick in the wall I was building. Harry and Mary had planned to rob me tonight with legal documents prepared at First National Bank. Alexa's warning and Dorothy's observation pointed to a scheme far more sinister than a simple loan request. They wanted control over my money, my home, maybe even my freedom. I opened my contact file and dialed James Miller's personal number. At 9:00 a.m. it was a reasonable time for a Sunday call to an old friend. James answered on the second ring, his voice warm but cautious. "Norman, good to hear from you. Everything all right? Sorry to bother you on a Sunday." "James?" I began, keeping my tone measured. "I've been reviewing my portfolio and had some thoughts about consolidation. What are the bank's policies on financial assistance programs these days? Consolidation, huh?" His voice brightened, professional but curious. "There are options: automated services, comprehensive management. What's on your mind?" I chose my words carefully, testing the water. "I'm thinking about power of attorney arrangements, conservatorship options." "Any clients dealing with those recently?" James paused, and I could almost hear him weighing confidentiality against our friendship. "Funny you should ask. Just last week I had a couple asking about guardianship procedures for an elderly family member. Very thorough people. They'd done their homework on conservatorship requirements, documentation, timelines." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "Thorough. Huh? Complex process, I bet." "Very," James said. "They asked specific questions about mental competency evaluations, financial management documentation, court approval, timelines. Knew the terminology better than some attorneys I've worked with. mental competency evaluations, court approvals. The words hit like a sledgehammer. Harry and Mary weren't just after my money, they'd researched how to have me declared incompetent to seize control of everything I'd built. Sounds like they really cared about their family member, I said, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. That's what struck me, James said. They were prepared, had medical opinions lined up, documentation ready. Said they expected the process to move quickly once initiated. Even asked about emergency conservatorship procedures for situations where immediate action was needed to protect someone's assets. Protect. The euphemism made my hands clench around the phone. They'd planned to institutionalize me to strip my independence while dividing my wealth. That's helpful, James, I said. Gives me a sense of the options. Can we meet tomorrow to review my portfolio in detail? Say 10 Hoiru at my place. Absolutely, he said. I'll bring the paperwork. Though, Norman, you sound sharper than men half your age. Can't imagine you needing assistance anytime soon, if only he knew. Let's hope you're right. See you tomorrow. I hung up my notes, now a map of their betrayal Tuesday bank visit. Conservatorship research, mental competency evaluations, emergency procedures. Harry and Mary had built a legal framework to steal my life, and they'd done it with chilling precision. Next, I called Catherine Davis, my notary for 20 years. Her voice was crisp, professional. Norman, good to hear from you. What's up? I need notary services tomorrow morning, I said. Power of attorney forms some family financial documents. Can you come by around 10 Tion? It's a sensitive matter, so I'd appreciate your discretion. You know you can count on me, she said. I'll bring my seal and journal. See you at 10. Catherine's training would spot coercion or irregular tactics immediately. Her presence, along with James's, would ensure any documents Harry and Mary brought tomorrow would be scrutinized by professionals who knew me, not them. My plan was taking shape, a structure as solid as any I'd built. I'd let them walk into their own trap with witnesses to document their deceit. Finally, I called Harry, letting my voice carry the tremulous uncertainty I'd faked at the party. Harry, I've been thinking about those papers you mentioned, I said, pausing as if struggling to gather my thoughts. You're right. I do need help managing things. His relief was palpable even through the phone. Dad, that's wonderful. Mary will be so relieved. We'll come by tomorrow morning, first thing. 10 to 0. Okay. Perfect, I said, my voice frail but warm. I've arranged for a notary to make it all legal. I trust you, son. You won't regret this, Dad. His words were eager, but they tasted bitter in my mouth. Trust, the one thing they'd betrayed. I hung up, walking to the window overlooking Ellen's rose garden. The single bud from last night had opened slightly, its petals defiant against the cold. Tomorrow, Harry and Mary would arrive expecting a confused old man ready to sign away his life. They had no idea they were walking into a reckoning. I pulled out a legal pad, writing the sequence of events I anticipated. 9:45, Catherine arrives. 10:00, James arrives. 10:05. Harry and Mary bring their documents. 10:15. The truth emerges. The irony was beautiful. They'd researched how to steal my independence, but legal procedures required witnesses, and those witnesses would be my shield. I looked at Alexa's drawing again, the stick figure family beside a crooked house. Tomorrow would decide whether that little girl grew up with a grandfather who protected her or parents who taught her that love could be bought. Ellen's voice echoed stronger now. Protect Alexa Norman. I would. With every brick of my resolve, every blueprint of my cunning, I'd ensure Harry and Mary faced the consequences of their betrayal. The roses in the garden swayed as if nodding in approval, and I felt Ellen's presence not as a ghost, but as a partner in this fight. The morning broke gray and heavy, the sky a canvas of storm clouds that mirrored the weight in my chest. I stood in my home office, Ellen's portrait, watching from above the safe, her eyes steady as if she knew what was coming. Last night's plan lay spread across my desk, notes, documents, and a legal pad outlining the sequence of today's reckoning. I'd slept little, my dreams haunted by Alexa's trembling voice and Harry's false smile. But I woke with a clarity sharper than any I'd felt in years. Today I wasn't just Norman Price grieving grandfather. I was the man who'd built an empire from a single truck, and I'd protect what was mine with every ounce of that strength. The clock read 9:10 a.m. I sipped my coffee, the bitter warmth grounding me as I reviewed my strategy. Harry and Mary would arrive at 10 expecting a frail, confused old man ready to sign their power of attorney forms. They'd bring their carefully prepared documents believing their plan to declare me incompetent was foolproof. But they'd underestimated me, and they'd forgotten the power of witnesses. James Miller, my banker and friend of 20 years, would see through their legal maneuvering. Catherine Davis, my notary, would document any coercion with her trained eye. Together they'd be my shield and my sword. I moved to the closet, choosing an old cardigan and slacks that made me look older, frailer, a deliberate costume for the performance ahead. I mussed my hair slightly, practicing a hesitant shuffle in front of the mirror. The reflection showed a man who could pass for vulnerable, but my eyes burned with purpose. Harry and Mary thought they were playing me, but I was the one setting the board. At 9:45, Catherine's car pulled into the driveway, her silver sedan gleaming under the overcast sky. She stepped out, her notary seal and journal tucked under her arm, her expression professional but warm. "Good morning, Norman," she said, stepping into the office. "Beautiful space. This should be straightforward." "Let's hope so," I replied, my voice carrying a weariness I didn't feel. "It's a sensitive family matter, so I appreciate your discretion." "You know you can count on me," she said, arranging her materials on the side table. Her efficiency was reassuring, a reminder of the dozens of contracts she'd notarized for Price Construction. She'd spot any irregularity in an instant. At 10:00 sharp, James knocked his banker's portfolio in hand. "Morning, Norman," he said, his voice warm but tinged with curiosity. "Ready for that portfolio review?" "More ready than you know," I said, gesturing to the chairs across from my desk. "Thank you for coming on short notice." James settled in, his eyes scanning the room, lingering on Ellen's portrait. I wondered if he sensed the storm brewing the same way I'd felt it yesterday at the party. Footsteps approached the front door and my pulse quickened. Harry and Mary entered, their smiles confident, but strained, a leather portfolio clutched in Mary's hands. They paused when they saw Catherine and James, a flicker of surprise crossing their faces. But Mary recovered quickly, her voice smooth as silk. "Norman, how thoughtful of you to arrange professional assistance. This will make everything so much more official." "Indeed it will," I said, my tone neutral, hiding the steel beneath. "Please take a seat." I settled behind my desk, the documents from last night hidden in a drawer, my notes tucked beneath a blank legal pad. Harry sat across from me, his smile faltering, while Mary perched beside him. Her posture perfect, her eyes calculating. "Dad, you sound better today," Harry said, his voice too eager. "More like your old self." "Exactly like my old self," I said, leaning forward, meeting his eyes directly. "Which is why I need to say something before we sign any documents." The room stilled, the air thick with anticipation, like the moment before a storm breaks. Mary's pen paused over her checklist, her smile tightening. "Norman, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong with me, Mary," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "But I'm fully aware of your plan." The silence stretched like a taut wire, their faces frozen in a tableau of shock. Harry's smile collapsed, his eyes darting to Mary, who sat rigid, her composure cracking for a fraction of a second. "Dad, what plan?" Harry's voice was strangled, his hands gripping the armrests. "We're here to help you." I held his gaze, letting the weight of my words settle. "I know about your visit to First National Bank last Tuesday. I know about the guardianship procedures you researched. I know about the mental competency evaluations you plan to arrange." Harry's face drained of color, his mouth opening, but no words coming out. Mary leaned forward, her voice sharp but controlled. "Norman, you're confused. We were at the bank for our own financial planning, not—" I cut her off, turning to James. "Would you mind sharing what they discussed during their Tuesday appointment?" James cleared his throat, his tone professional but firm. They asked detailed questions about conservatorship procedures, documentation for declaring someone mentally incompetent, expedited court processes for emergency financial management. They were very specific, knew the legal terminology well. Catherine looked up from her journal, her pen still. "Mr. Price, are you saying these power of attorney documents were prepared under false pretenses? I'm saying they plan to have me declared incompetent to steal everything I've built over 40 years. I said, my voice steady but hard. I opened my desk drawer, pulling out the ledger I'd prepared last night. 247 transactions, $70,000 in payments to Harry and Mary. I slid it across the desk, letting the numbers speak for themselves. Mortgage payments, car repairs, Alexa's tuition. Every request was a step in a campaign to condition me to make me say yes to larger and larger amounts until I'd agree to sign away my independence. Mary's eyes narrowed, her voice rising. Those were legitimate family expenses, Norman. You're twisting everything. Am I? I pulled out their power of attorney forms, the ones they'd brought, and spread them across the desk. The highlighted signature lines glared like accusations. These documents would give you control over my finances, my medical decisions, my home. You researched how to institutionalize me, to declare me unfit while you divided my assets. $2.3 million in liquid assets. 3 rental properties, this house more than you realized. But you were ready to take it all. Harry's hands shook, his voice barely a whisper. Dad, we were worried about you. Yesterday you seemed so confused. Yesterday I was performing, I said, my gaze locking onto his. Today you're seeing who I really am. I turned to Catherine. These documents were prepared to exploit me, to use fabricated evidence of confusion to seize control. I want that noted. Catherine set down her pen, her expression grim. This is highly irregular. I need to understand the full situation before notarizing anything. The full situation, I continued, my voice rising with controlled fury, is that my son and daughter-in-law spent weeks researching legal procedures to steal my wealth. They consulted attorneys about guardianship, planned mental competency evaluations, and prepared for an emergency conservatorship to protect my assets from my own supposed incompetence. James spoke, his voice quiet but heavy. Norman, their questions at the bank were very specific. They asked about timelines, medical opinions, court approvals, things most families don't know unless they're planning something significant. Catherine nodded. In my experience, legitimate financial planning doesn't involve researching how to declare someone incompetent behind their back. Harry buried his face in his hands, his breathing labored. Mary stood abruptly, her composure cracking. You're twisting everything, Norman. We love you. We were trying to help. Love doesn't involve conspiracy, I said, my voice cutting through her protest. Love doesn't involve exploiting an 8-year-old's trust to keep your secrets. I paused, letting the weight of Alexa's betrayal settle over them. She heard you, Mary, last night when she was supposed to be asleep. She told me everything. Harry's head snapped up, his eyes wide with horror. Alexa, she heard you say, I have too much money for an old man. I said, my voice low but sharp. She heard you plan to fix that problem with these papers. She carried that secret to protect me because she loves me. And you put that burden on her. Mary's face paled, but she didn't flinch. You're misunderstanding Norman. We were discussing options to enough, I said, my hand slamming the desk, the sound echoing like a gavel. The room fell silent, the air thick with the wreckage of their plan. You've had 3 years to prove your love. Instead, you've taken $70,000, manipulated my trust, and planned to steal my life. But you forgot who I am. I opened another drawer, pulling out the new will I'd drafted last night. I'm changing my estate plans effective immediately. Everything $2.3 million, the properties this house goes into an educational trust for Alexa accessible when she turns 21. It'll cover college, graduate school, whatever path she chooses. I slid the documents toward Catherine. I need these witnessed and notarized. Harry leaned forward, a desperation in his voice. Dad, please. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. There's a condition. I said, my eyes locked on his. If you and Mary renounce all claims to my estate and prove genuine change over the next year, jobs, responsibility, prioritizing Alexa's happiness, I'll reconsider. But you'll have to show me she matters more than my bank account. Mary's voice cracked, her facade crumbling. How are we supposed to live without your support? The same way millions of families do, I said. Through honest work. The mortgage payments stop today. The car loans end now. You're adults with college degrees. Figure it out. Catherine examined the new will, her tone professional. These terms are specific, Mr. Price. The trust is well structured. She began notarizing, her seal stamping the pages with finality. James nodded, witnessing my signature. The trust ensures Alexa's future, Norman. It's a solid plan. Harry's hands shook as he gripped the chair. What does genuine change mean? How do we prove it? By becoming the parents Alexa deserves, I said. By showing her love isn't a transaction. You have 1 year. Actions, not words, Harry. Mary stood, her eyes blazing. You can't do this to your own family. I'm protecting my family, I said, my voice unwavering. From parents who'd traumatize their daughter to fund their greed. The room fell silent, the weight of truth settling like dust. Catherine finished notarizing, handing me the documents. These are legally binding, Mr. Price. Keep them secure. My attorney will have copies by this afternoon, I said, shaking her hand, then James's. Thank you both for your time. They left with promises of discretion, their footsteps fading down the hall. Harry, Mary, and I sat in a silence that felt like a battlefield after the fight. Harry looked broken, his eyes red, his shoulders slumped. Mary's face was a mask of calculation, already plotting her next move. Is there anything else you want to say? I asked, my voice softer now, but not weak. Harry met my eyes, his voice barely audible. I'm sorry, Dad. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. Mary said nothing, her silence louder than any defense. It told me everything, her priorities, her heart, her role in this betrayal. Words are cheap, Harry, I said. Show me you mean it. For Alexa's sake. They left without another word, the leather portfolio abandoned on my desk, a relic of their failed scheme. I slumped in my chair, the performance draining from me. The documents they'd brought lay open, their highlighted lines, a confession of intent, power of attorney control over my finances, my medical decisions, my home. Everything James had warned about laid bare in legal ink. But I'd won this round, not with anger, but with the precision of a man who'd built his life on outsmarting those who underestimated him. I walked to the window, Ellen's rose garden stretching before me. The single bud from last night had bloomed fully, its petals, a defiant red against the gray. I felt her presence not as a ghost, but as a partner, her voice whispering, You did it, Norman. You protected her. The storm clouds parted, a sliver of sunlight breaking through, and I knew this wasn't the end. It was a beginning for Alexa, for justice, for the family we could still become. The afternoon sun broke through the storm clouds, casting a soft golden glow over Ellen's rose garden. I stood at the window, my hands still trembling from the morning's confrontation, but my heart was steady, anchored by the weight of what I'd accomplished. Harry and Mary were gone, their leather portfolio left behind, like a confession on my desk. The documents I'd signed, Alexa's educational trust, witnessed and notarized, sat in a folder, a fortress for her future. The battle was over, but the war for my granddaughter's happiness was just beginning. I felt Ellen's presence in the roses, their petals unfurling as if in approval, whispering, You protected her, Norman. You kept your promise. I glanced at Alexa's drawing on the refrigerator, the purple crayon house with its stick figure family. "Best day ever, Grandpa." The words felt like a vow now, a reminder of the girl who'd carried a secret too heavy for her small shoulders. I'd stopped Harry and Mary's scheme, but Alexa needed more than legal victories. She needed to know she was loved, that her future was secure, that betrayal didn't define her family. I picked up the phone and dialed Harry's number, my voice calm but firm. "Bring Alexa over this afternoon," I said. "Just her. We need to talk." Harry's voice was subdued, the bravado of yesterday gone. "Okay, Dad. We'll drop her off at 300. No arguments, no excuses." He knew he'd lost more than a financial scheme this morning. He'd lost my trust, and that was a steeper price. I spent the next hour tidying the house, a ritual to ground myself. The roses Mary never received sat in a vase on the kitchen counter, their petals curling inward, a silent rebuke of her greed. I swept the floor, straightened the chairs in my office, and tucked the notarized trust documents into my safe, spinning the lock with Ellen's birthday, 18 to 1959. Each action felt like laying bricks in a new foundation, one built for Alexa's future, not Harry and Mary's ambition. At 300 sharp, Alexa's small figure appeared at the front door, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her eyes wide but wary. Harry stood behind her, his face haggard. Mary nowhere in sight. "She's all yours, Dad," he said, avoiding my gaze. "We'll pick her up at 500. "Take your time," I said, my tone neutral but edged with warning. He nodded, retreating to his car like a man carrying the weight of his own failures. I closed the door and knelt to Alexa's level, her small face searching mine for answers. "Come here, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug. Her arms tightened around me, and for a moment the world was just us, grandfather and granddaughter, bound by love against a storm of betrayal. "Grandpa, are you okay?" she asked, her voice small but steady. "Did I do something wrong by telling you?" "You did exactly the right thing," I said, guiding her to the living room couch. "You were brave, Alexa. Braver than most grown-ups I know." I sat beside her, the sunlight filtering through the window, catching the dust motes in a dance that felt almost magical. "I want to tell you what happened today so you don't have to worry anymore." Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and hope. "Did you stop them?" "I did," I said, my voice soft but certain. "Your mom and dad brought papers to take my money like you said. But I had friends there, Mr. Miller from the bank and Ms. Davis, who makes things official. They helped me make sure your future is safe." Her brow furrowed, her 8-year-old mind grappling with the weight of it. "What do you mean, my future?" I took her hand, her small fingers warm in mine. "I've set up something called a trust. It's money I've saved just for you to make sure you can go to college, become a doctor or an engineer or whatever you dream of. No one can touch it. Not your mom, not your dad, not even me. It's yours when you're 21 to help you build your life." Her eyes lit up, a spark of the joy I'd seen at her birthday party before the shadows took hold. "Like a vet, I could help animals." "Exactly," I said, smiling. "Or build bridges, or write books, or travel the world. Whatever you want, sweetheart. This trust is my promise that you'll have choices no matter what happens." She leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. "Will Mom and Dad be mad at me?" "They don't know you told me," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And they won't unless you want them to. But they're going to have to make some changes. I told them they need to prove they're good parents to you, not just people who want money. They have a year to show me they mean it." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Dad looked sad this morning. Mom was just quiet." "That's because they know they made a mistake," I said. "Your dad might want to fix it deep down. Your mom—" I paused, choosing my words carefully. Mary's silence in the confrontation had spoken volumes, her calculating heart laid bare. "Your mom has some growing to do. But no matter what they do, I'm here for you. Always." She looked up, her eyes bright with tears but strong. "You're not going to leave me, are you?" "Grandpa?" "Never," I said, my voice thick with emotion. You're my best girl, Alexa. Nothing will change that. I stood taking her hand. Come on, let's go see the garden. Your grandma's roses are blooming today. We walked outside, the air crisp with the scent of earth and autumn leaves. Ellen's rose garden stretched before us, the single bud I'd noticed last night, now a vibrant red joined by others beginning to open. Alexa knelt beside it, her fingers brushing the petals with a reverence that reminded me of Ellen. They're so pretty, she said. Like Grandma's still here. She is, I said, my voice soft. Every time you smile, every time you're brave. She's right here with us. I felt Ellen's presence then, not as a ghost, but as a warmth, a certainty that I'd honored her final wish. The garden seemed to glow, the roses swaying, as if nodding in agreement, their colors a promise of renewal. Alexa stood, her backpack bouncing as she turned to me. Can I come back tomorrow and help you water them every day if you want, I said. This garden's yours too, just like the trust. A piece of Grandma, a piece of me for you to carry forward. She grinned, the first real smile I'd seen since her birthday, and it was like sunlight breaking through the clouds. Can we build the Lego set you got me? The Statue of Liberty one? Absolutely, I said, leading her back inside. Let's start right now. We spent the next hour on the living room floor snapping Lego pieces together, her laughter filling the house with a joy I hadn't heard in too long. As we built, she chattered about school, her dreams of being a vet, her questions about college, questions that showed a mind already reaching for the future. I answered each one, my heart swelling with pride. She was Ellen's granddaughter, my legacy, and I'd ensured her path was clear. At 5:00, Harry's car pulled into the driveway. Alexa hugged me tightly, her backpack slung over her shoulder. I love you, Grandpa, she said, her voice fierce. Thank you for keeping your promise. I love you too, sweetheart, I said, kissing her forehead. You're my best day ever. She ran to the car, waving as Harry drove away, his face still shadowed but softer, as if her light was already working on him. I returned to the garden, the roses glowing in the fading light. The single red bloom stood tall, a symbol of resilience, of love that endured betrayal. I felt Ellen beside me, her presence woven into the petals, the air, the quiet strength of this moment. Harry and Mary had a year to prove themselves, but Alexa's future was secure. I'd built a new foundation, not of concrete or steel, but of trust and love. And as the roses swayed, I knew we'd be okay.